Welcome to the Old Dawg Leadership Podcast. Real leaders with real lessons learned. Direct, practical, and no bullshito. Built by those who do, shared for those who will.
Adam Hoots here, coming at you. Super excited to kick this one off. We've got one of my favorite human beings on the planet here today. But before we dive in there, I got another one of my favorite humans, Mike Chiles. How are you today, Mike?
What is up, everybody? What is up, Old Dawg Nation? I am super excited to be here. This is going to be the start of an amazing series, and you guys are going to love this. We're going to be challenged, but we're also going to learn a ton about our brains.
And that's what it's all about, right? Learning and teaching at the same dang time. And Mike, what are we doing, man? Who is this guy we've got between us right now?
I think, Brent, you're going to have, because I've been dying to know. I got a little bit of your story, Brent. So Brent Darnell's with us today, y'all. He is the EI man when it comes to especially construction. And
EIOG is what we call him.
Yeah. He has been putting out content left and right, trying to get people better and trying to make our industry better. And I'm so thankful for that. But Brent, I want you to tell everybody a little bit about you. Who are you and what got you going on this EI journey?
Yeah. First and foremost, I'm a construction guy. I grew up in the construction business, third generation contractor, moved around every 18 months following the jobs my dad had as a kid and worked in it from the time I was old enough to work. So that's first and foremost, and love the industry. My dad was an old dog and he taught me a lot about the people into the business, and he was a great guy. And I'm a mechanical engineer by education, Georgia Tech graduate. Started off in industrial piping, didn't really like it, went into commercial construction as an MEP coordinator, did that for a while. And since 2000, I've been teaching emotional intelligence and all of those critical people skills to the industry with an emphasis on performance, highest levels of mental, physical, and emotional performance. So we talk a lot about stress and nutrition and sleep and exercise and human connection and how that contributes to performance and longevity. And it's like training the industry like professional athletes, because we're in this high stress, high stakes. You need a high level of performance. And we just don't pay much of attention to that these days. So that's where my focus is. It's also morphed over into mental health and well-being, substance use disorders. I do a lot of work in that realm in the industry and help out where I can there. One interesting note, I did quit and became a full-time actor and writer for a while when I was in my career as a MEP coordinator and project manager, and did a lot of theater, did a lot of improv theater, did some stand-up comedy, did some low-budget horrible movies. And I had a small role on the old TV show In the Heat of the Night. Remember that show?
Oh,
I
yeah.
played a redneck auto mechanic drug dealer on In the Heat of the Night. It's an episode called The Littlest Victim. And I get beat up by Lonnie Jameson, who's Hugh O'Connor's character in the show. So, yeah.
So did you really take the hits?
And these combat choreographers there, and they showed you how to pull a punch. And poor Hugh O'Connor, he was really strung out on cocaine and drugs at the time, and he couldn't really get it. And finally, I just said, "Hey, Hugh, why don't you just hit me? It'll be fine. I'll be okay." He couldn't hit his mark. It took us a whole day to film like a two-minute scene.
Dude, that's crazy.
And he ended up dying from an overdose a few years later. Man. He had a lot of drug issues. In fact, that whole cast had some drug issues. Howard Rollins, or who was the guy that played Tibbs, he had a cocaine problem too, and he ended up leaving the show, going into rehab. So
yeah,
luckily I didn't get into that.
You were the dealer, right?
Yeah,
he was the redneck drug dealer.
I was the redneck drug dealer, absolutely.
Yeah, that is interesting, man. There's a lot. You could have a whole episode on that, man, just unpacking that story. I know your dad was obviously a huge influence on you, but what was it where you were like, you know what, the industry needs to be better, and I've got to focus on EI, and that was over 25 years ago now. So Well,
It's interesting. I was working for Skanska at the time. In the US, they pronounce it Skanska, but in Sweden, they pronounce it Skanska. So I was a project manager, and they were looking for somebody to run this leadership program out of Sweden because at the time, Skanska was buying companies all over the world. And they said, our leadership program is very Swedish, and we want it to be international because we're buying all these companies in all over Europe and Russia and Buenos Aires and Argentina and all in the US. I threw my hat in that ring, and they said, yeah, we want you to do this. So I did that for a couple of years. And the first year for the personal leadership stuff, we did something called UGL. It's a Swedish military personal leadership thing, and it's really awesome. But the second year, probably half to three quarters of the guys had already been through UGL. And it's a one and done thing. There's all these revelations that you get by going through the process. So we were looking for something else. And we looked at all these personality tests. We looked at DISC and Myers-Briggs and 16PF and all these things. And we looked at emotional intelligence. And we decided on the emotional intelligence part for a couple of reasons. Number one, some of these personality tests have never been scientifically validated. I mean, anything that gives you insight into who you are, I think, is valuable. But that was important to the group that were choosing this next thing. And we saw this emotional intelligence evaluation, the Barron EQI. It was validated. We like the fact that personality is pretty fixed, but emotional intelligence can change dramatically, and you can learn it and improve it. So we chose that, and the results were just incredible. And it's measurable, it's improvable. You get a graph, and you can pick things that you want to work on. And usually, what I've told people is, if you see behavioral issues, it will always show up in their emotional profile every time, without fail. That happens. So did that for a couple of years. At the end of the 2 years, they said, "Okay, we're going to do something else. Go back to Atlanta." And I went back to Atlanta, and I said, "Hey guys, I've learned all this great leadership stuff, and I'd love to do that here." And they said, "We don't need that. That's crap. We don't need that stuff." Because this was in 2000, the end of 2001, right? And so they said, "But we want you to go project manage this gymnasium at a high school in Albany, Georgia." And I had traveled the world and did these programs for 2 years. And I just said, you know what? I can't get excited about that. So I saw a need. I said, so that's when I decided I'm going to just do this full time on my own, start this. And I did, and never looked back. The first few years are pretty rough going because, as you can imagine, in the early 2000s, people just thought this was total crap. Like, why would we even talk about this, right? So then I found a couple of real advocates and companies that were trying this and the results they got, and just kept building on that. And then in 2012, I got the Engineering News Record Top 25 Newsmaker for this work that I was doing. The quote from the winning thing, it said, "For transforming alpha males into service-focused leaders." So that was the ENR thing in 2012. So that gave me a little boost, and this kept working, kept coaching people, kept working with companies, kept getting great results, kept refining the process. And then, so as of late, I see this as a legacy for me. I put all of my courses, as you guys know, in an online format, a self-directed format. And to me, that's the beauty of that for me, is when I start cutting back and working less and maybe inching toward retirement, I can still affect positive change in the industry and help the industry.
I love that.
So that's where I am now.
Hey, I'm
So
hearing you say,
I think you're making.
hey, I heard you say industrial athletes, and we've talked to Roxanne, who talks about the neuroscience behind it, and talked about different ways that we can affect our job sites. We talked to Jamar, who talks about the nutrition side. Talked to you talking about the emotional intelligence side. And what's interesting to me is, if you do go look in the world of professional sports, they do have all these things, and they do focus on all these things. All these experts are part of a team and part of basically a coaching staff, and they'll travel around and they'll make sure to focus on those with the athletes. And then you think about a typical job site, that focus, there's people that just show up, they got to work hard, and that's all that they need to focus on. And then
Right.
they go back, and then they have a lifestyle that doesn't promote them showing up to work in the heat or work hard the next day. and they can just really get worn down and just make it to where they feel terrible, and they feel like they don't want to go into work every day. And really, that being intentional about growing them as the industrial athlete, I really like that concept. And we have to be more intentional about how, because they just don't know, right? They just haven't learned how to do
Yeah,
this. So how do you're starting to, you really focus on construction. I know we have these self-taught modules, but what can we do to go get to the worker on site and get them hungry to where they want to
right.
learn some of that stuff?
Think about it. You've got folks that are in high pressure situations and really just the environment around them is difficult to work in. So they're highly stressed. They eat crap food. They don't get sleep. They don't manage their stress well. They don't connect with other humans because maybe they're traveling and staying in a hotel alone. And then we expect them to perform at a high level. That's insanity. But here's the kicker: they do perform at a high level. And I always ask people, did you ever work on a project that didn't get done? They all get done. You work through, you finish them, you walk away, you go to the next one. So these people are overcoming so much and getting it done, but it comes at a really high cost. Because look at the industry. Look, we got the second highest suicide rate of any industry. Suicide kills 5 times more people than accidents. And opioid overdoses kill. So it's 1,000 for accidental deaths, 5,000 die by suicide, 14,000 die by overdose. So it's a problem. And when people push back at me and say, hey, why are you here? This is total crap. We don't need this. Guess what? We do need it. You aren't doing well. You're really not doing well. According to every indicator that I have, you're not doing well. You don't have this. You don't got this anymore. This is a problem that needs to be addressed. So simple things to start doing is just start having the discussions around this, right? Start talking about nutrition and sleep and exercise. And here's the thing about exercise. They go, I exercise all day. I'm working hard all day. It's a different kind of exercise. When you're working or walking job sites, that's an exercise filled with hypervigilance and a lot of stress. It's not the same as lifting weights, going to the gym, doing some yoga or swimming or walking with your family or something like that. It's a totally different experience. Your body reacts to it in a totally different way. So start having those discussions around it and do some real simple things like tell the food trucks, either you start bringing in some healthy food or you're banned from this job site. Bring some healthier things to the meetings instead of donuts and Danish, right? Simple things you can do. Don't have a giant jar of candy sitting there in the trailer, right? Those are,
Fine,
you know,
Brent. Gosh dang it.
those are simple things you can do to just start the discussion. And here's something I do with all the field guys I work with and some project teams. We call it the 1 to 10. I think we talked about this before, right? So you check in once a week, once a month, whatever that is, and you do 1 to 10. So 1 is I'm eating crap food, not sleeping, feel like crap, I'm exhausted, not connecting with family. 10 is, man, feeling great, looking great, eating great, sleeping well. Everything's really good in my life. I'm on top of my stress. I'm doing my box breathing or meditation every day. So then we go around to every person and they'll give us a number. And it's usually in about the 4 to 7 range. And then the next question for each person is what one thing could you focus on the coming week to get that number higher? And for some people, it's when I get my sleep, I feel good, or I just need to cut out some fast food and bring my lunch a couple of days this week, or I need to get up earlier and do my meditation and breathing and devotionals and things like that to prepare for the day, whatever that is. And so when you start doing that check in, of course, in the beginning, people will lie and they'll say, I'm a 9. So then they learn to trust that everybody's telling the real number. So we start getting real numbers. But here's the coolest thing that happens: the people that say I'm a 2 or a 3, people start like talking to them. Tell us more about that. Why are you a 2 this week? I'm getting over the flu, or I've been traveling a lot, or whatever those things are. They offer support. And it's an automatic connection and support mechanism when you start getting people to share the 1 to 10. And we just call it 1 to 10. And it's a great way to check in with everybody. It's a great way to offer support. And for the people that do say 9 and we go, really, is it a 9? They say, yeah. Well, how do you do that? What are you doing? And so they start sharing the things that are effective for them to maintain all of those healthy lifestyle choices and things that we know to do to maintain and to get a high level of performance.
So I'm a huge fan of that, and I have absolutely taken that from you. I think you brought that to one of our Old Dog
I
Lean
did.
coffees,
I
and
did.
I have used that with our team, just like a quick Monday check. How was your weekend, 1 to 10? Or
Yeah.
Friday check-in. How has your week been, 1 to 10? And you get some really good, transparent conversations. I'm a huge fan of that. I love that as just a simple way to check in. And I don't know if this is the academic in me coming out right now or what, but I feel like we just dove right into like, all right, man, what can we do? But I don't know that I truly understand. I want to set some parameters, some definitions here as we go through this series. I heard you use the word performance, and
Mhm.
that felt very intentional early on. You're using this word emotional, not really sure what the heck that means. And then intelligence, I've got this kind of feeling, is it competent or not? So you've used a lot of really big words, and this is an
Yeah.
old dog leadership podcast with no bullshito. So can you kind of unveil the curtain on what some of these words or strategic intentions are here?
Sure. The term emotional intelligence has been around for a while. I think actually the beginning of that was a guy named Gardner that talked about different intelligences like social intelligence, and there's different intelligence that he designated. But then Salovey and Mayer, two guys that really did a lot of early studies on this. This was around, my mentor named Kate Cannon was doing this emotional intelligence work at American Express back in the 80s. It's been around for a while. And then Daniel Goleman came out with the book Emotional Intelligence in 94, and he's brought it to the mainstream and brought it to the masses. And he's been criticized for that book about emotional intelligence is not some magic bullet that solves all your problems, but it is a well researched theory that really lends itself to, in terms of academia and academic rigor and validation, it's pretty solid. And what they're finding more and more, the more sophisticated they get with these MRIs and functional MRIs and looking at the brain and looking at what lights up when you do certain things, it's totally validated by neuroscientists, and that we're hardwired for emotions. You cannot escape emotional input into your thought processes. In fact, Goleman talks about a guy who's the highway between the thinking part and the emotional parts of your brain, his brain were severed. He could still think totally clearly and think logically and tell you 10 ways to get to his doctor's appointment, but he couldn't decide which way to go. So without the emotional input, everything became neutral, everything became the same. So this is you need emotions for decision making. And then further reinforce that, a guy named Kahneman wrote a book called Thinking Fast and Slow. He was a psychologist that studied, he got a Nobel Prize for economics because he studied how do people buy things and how do people decide what to purchase. As it turns out, it's pretty much of an emotional decision. It's the ease of the decision and emotional input into the decision. So again, there's so much research and data that back this up, the whole idea of emotional intelligence and the whole idea of being able to measure and improve those areas. It's totally backed by science. It's totally backed by some really solid research. So what else do you want to know?
What is it? Again, it's something, I think there's a few pieces to it, at
Yeah.
least what I've researched. And I think people can soar and thrive in some of the segments and also
Mhm.
struggle in others just the same, and be totally unaware that they're struggling.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are
Well,
the make it up to you?
it's it starts with evaluating what is your emotional intelligence. What is the level? And we use something called the EQI 2.0, but we've also created a little free test that's on my website in the store called the Geist EI test. And Geist was a friend of mine. He had a PhD in sociology, and he's the one that helped me create this test. And so that's the first step, is measure your emotional intelligence. If you're going to improve something, you have to measure it. So you take an evaluation, you decide, are these things true for me? Are they problematic for me? I'll give you an example. We see a lot of what we call the alpha profile in this industry. So that's high assertiveness and lower empathy. So with that dynamic and with those deltas in really high assertiveness, really low empathy, we call it the alpha profile. Alphas are cool people. They're usually your high performers. They're the drivers. They get things done. They make results, right? But the downside of alphas with the lower empathy and that delta between the empathy and assertiveness is they don't listen well. They don't ask for input or opinions. They tend to not have any very good self-care. They drive so hard, they don't take care of themselves, which will show up also in their emotional profile under stress and stress tolerance, and things like chronic stress and burnout can show up in your emotional profile. So again, what I said before is whatever problems you're experiencing in your life and your work, they will show up in that profile. I guarantee that it will. And then once, okay, this behavior is a problem for me, I can see it in the profile. Now I can choose some specific things to work on to change that behavior. And see, most of the stuff that I've seen out there doesn't really work on behavioral change. They work on self-awareness and understanding. But this actually changes behavior. Another quick example, we see the control profile a lot. Control, perfectionist. So that's high reality testing and problem solving. So it's sort of black, white thinking, great at problem solving under pressure, but low flexibility. So we call that the control or perfectionist profile. And think about it, the practical terms of that. Number one, you're going to work your ass off and become a workaholic because you're going to try to get your hands in everything, get in the weeds. Those people have trouble delegating. It's the biggest stumbling block to career advancement that I see in these emotional profiles. So again, you see your profile and you say control perfectionist and you go, wow, that's me. And that's a problem because I work a lot and I get in the weeds every day. I need to let go of some of that control. There's a specific competence you can work on. Flexibility will shift that dynamic, will create more balance in your profile, and ultimately change that behavior.
Man, that was good. What do you
Does
think?
that explain
Man,
it?
I'm sick of Brent punching me in the face, man. Now he's talking about alpha dog. You're saying I can't bring donuts to the job. Gosh, he's just whooping me, man.
No more control. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
Yeah.
starting to sweat now, man. He's putting the pressure on,
yeah.
dude.
I'm hiding over here behind the mic.
And to be fair, guys, I grew up in the business. I always tell people I'm a recovering asshole.
That's
When I
awesome.
first started this work, I was that guy, that degreed engineer, smartest guy in the room, call out your mistakes, tell you how stupid you are. That was me. I was that guy, that asshole in the room, that pretty smart, pretty good builder, pretty good with the technical stuff, a lot of knowledge and a lot of smarts, and just kind of an asshole. And my wife will tell you I haven't fully recovered yet.
Yeah.
She reminds me all the time. She says, "Don't you teach this shit? What the hell?" A little bit of empathy here. So I'm sure I had that alpha profile early in my
Yeah.
career. But again, and I lapse back into that at times. We all do. Under times of stress and pressure, you lapse back into that. And also that control perfectionist, that was me all over. In fact, I think early on in my career at Georgia Tech, I would have probably been diagnosed OCD. Like I was hyper vigilant. When I walked into a room, I could tell you the number of ceiling tiles and floor tiles there were.
Wow.
I would count them. I would have these rituals about, like, I couldn't go to sleep at night if something was crooked in my closet. I would have to get up out of bed and straighten everything up.
Yeah, I would agree on the OCD diagnosis there.
Yeah, it was bad. But then that was also 1977 was the year I started meditating and doing yoga. So I've been doing that for nearly 50 years now, and I'm a certified yoga instructor. So I'm teaching these guys a lot about breathing techniques, pranayama, breathing techniques, meditation techniques, mindfulness techniques. And the reason they most continue to do this is they work. You can call it what you want, and you can say yoga's bullshit and I'm not a meditator. That's a bunch of crap, but it works. And if you choose not to do it, that's okay. It's no, I still love you if you don't do stuff that I'm trying to teach you. That's fine, but find what works for you. That's what I always tell people. So these things that seem to converge and all come together, like my own journey with improving my emotional intelligence and this whole thing with yoga, meditation, breathing, mindfulness, it, those things are infused into everything we do in terms of coaching and training and leadership and all that.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome. And you talked about how you were on a job site. A lot of people are that way on a job site, and there is a toughness component to the job site, right? Where you just got to show that you're tough and can grind through and do it. It's tough work,
Yeah.
right? So you
Yeah,
got to show that
totally.
you can take it. But I don't know if you agree with the statistics, but I think a 70-30, where most of our decisions are 70% based off emotions. And so if you think about that, I know there's a lot of tough, the tough field guys that say that they don't deal with emotions or don't mess with emotions, but anger is an emotion, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you get frustrated, that's emotion, and then you cut people off because of a lot of decisions. I guess you think about it, 70% of it, if it's emotion driven, we have to stop and say, okay, if that is true, then I am reacting with emotions. Now, it may not be the emotions I'm thinking about, right? But there are
Right.
still emotions there. And when you're talking about leading people, which we have to get into a little bit of the electric currents here that you were teaching us about, because that was powerful to me. On you can try to fake it till you make it, but basically you are going to project something to your team no matter what. And
Yeah.
you might as well decide, how do you want that team to go, and be intentional with that. Do you want everybody defensive and angry and shut down and in their corners, or do you want everybody feeling like they can share vulnerabilities and they're not going to be smacked down and they're not going to be in a place where they're afraid to do that, right?
Yeah, totally. Emotions create energy, electromagnetic fields around it. People can feel that. You can feel that. But also, what are you? Not only is it about you showing that vulnerability, which creates that where everybody feels safer to show their vulnerability. That's good leadership. But also, I always tell people that the superintendent's always worried. Are you going to turn me into this wimpy? I said, no, that'll never happen. All we're doing is creating a little more balance so that you can still be that driver. You can still be that high performer, but you can also be compassionate and empathetic when it's called for. And here's what I tell them. I talk about strategic anger. If they're just pissed off every day and yelling at everybody every day, it becomes this, everybody just rolls their eyes and go, there they go again. But if you're calm and cool and connecting and compassionate and empathetic, when you get angry, people are going to really pay attention.
Yeah.
Like when you really need them to pay attention, you kick the anger in and they pay attention. But if you're angry all the time, it becomes this, it just, people just ignore you, right? But here's the other thing that most people don't realize about those stronger emotions. And I always tell people there are no negative emotions. It's just information, right? It's just informing you on how you're reacting to something. So when you're in a chronic stress state, or when you're in an anger state, a lot of the time, you know what happens to your thinking brain? It shuts down. Your body thinks it's in fight flight, so you start pumping out adrenaline and cortisol. Your thinking brain shuts down because when you're in danger, you don't have to analyze stuff. Your brain doesn't need to analyze it, so it's just reacting. So when you're in that chronic stress state, you can't solve problems as readily. You can't make as good of decisions. So that chronic stress state or that anger state affects judgment and affects cognition. It affects how you think and it affects how you make decisions. So again, think about that in terms of performance. Think about a professional athlete or a golfer that's in a chronic stress state. They don't play as well. They don't perform as well. So we need to start having these discussions and teaching people these techniques to manage stress and to make sure they're doing these recovery techniques with nutrition and sleep and all those things that we know that increases their performance and longevity, by the way. Have you seen these people that have been in the industry for 20 or 30 years and they're debilitated? They're overweight, they have back problems, knee problems, joint problems, they have some kind of autoimmune something, diabetes, heart disease, all these things. I would love to see everybody retire from this industry full of vigor and full of energy and full of health so they can enjoy that. That's what I would that's my ultimate long-term vision for this is what if that were true? Man, we'd have trouble keeping people out of this industry if that were true.
What a utopia that would be, huh?
My name is Jason Jacobson. I'm with J. Michael Solutions. I've been an executive coach in this industry for about 10 years now. I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing with my career, working with professionals like yourselves to help you have a better, successful career, and even more importantly for me, the balance that you can have in your personal life. It's really sad to me that over the last 10 years, I've met with too many people who are on marriage number 4 or 5, and their kids don't talk to them anymore because of this industry and the sacrifice you feel you have to make in order to be successful. In the 10 years I've been coaching, I've worked with people from the field to the boardroom, and I know that leadership starts with self-leadership. I do what I do because I genuinely care about seeing you getting what you want from this life. Let's just get to know each other. Head out to my website, jmichaelsolutions.com, for a meet and greet.
Mike, I'm starting to kind of put two of our favorite people together now, right? Like Mac's story has a saying, between stimulus and response, there's a pause, right? A moment.
Yeah.
And so I keep hearing Mac in my head say those words specifically. And then all of a sudden I see Brent Darnell pick up and flash into my brain. And he says, and in that moment, Hoots, identify how you're feeling, use the right emotion, and regulate that shit, would you?
Yeah, so that's the mirror, right? Yeah, Max says you got to look in the mirror too. And yeah, Brent's talking about taking ownership, just like you were saying, Adam.
Yeah. Like what emotions, identify it, right? The first step, identify that you have a problem, identify which emotion you're working with, right? And then try and figure out where you go from there. And I guess, I don't know, Brent, this is something like the emotional side of this thing I still struggle with quite a bit, in full transparency and vulnerability. Like,
Sure.
even recognizing the emotion. Let
Yeah.
me ask this. Are there really truly, aren't there 6 main emotions? Is that right? Is that a
I've heard that, and I think that's probably partially true, but behind every one of those 6, there's probably hundreds of nuances of those emotions. And we talk a lot in the work that we do about emotional literacy, because ultimately this is about emotional awareness and then emotional management. So, in order to be more aware, if you can determine the nuance differences and all of those emotions behind anger, frustration, impatience, rage, there's all these different levels that are with anger. If you can get that nuanced emotion, then you can manage it much easier, because think about it this way: rage just doesn't happen right here. Rage happens way back over here with a little bit of discomfort. And then I'm getting a little bit anxious here. And then, oh, I'm starting to feel, and it just keeps going and going until people see the explosion in the rage, right? If you can have that emotional literacy and recognize that little discomfort way back here, then you can manage that much better than you can manage rage. Once you hit
Yeah.
that rage, you're like, people say, I see red and I blank out and I didn't even know what I said. But if you can catch it way back here, that's emotional literacy, and then emotional awareness, and then emotional management. So the more you're able to identify those nuanced emotions, the better you're able to manage them. So we teach a lot about that. In fact, one of the things we have in our EI roadmap is a whole emotional vocabulary words, and you pick the ones that you're feeling in that moment. We also have this thing called Plutchik's feeling wheel, which talks about all those different emotions and the progression of emotions and how to manage them better. And that's ultimately what this is. And my definition of emotional intelligence is understanding and managing your own emotions, and understanding and managing the emotions of others for the best outcomes. So sometimes that means being compassionate and empathetic. Sometimes that means being assertive. It's knowing when to do which thing to which person at which time. That's where the magic happens.
Yeah, you're on to, I think the hardest part, you're all the stuff you're talking about, Brent, is it's focusing on you. You've got to manage you. And I think that's what makes this so dang hard is
Yeah.
the you piece of that. That's what I see. I see a lot of times when I see people blow up randomly, it's you can tell they're in a meeting, something happens, they get news they don't like, and they don't have time to process that news. And the
Mhm.
team keeps going, and then they get overwhelmed, and then they just snap, right? Like you were,
Yeah.
I think it's the how do you go work into meetings or whatever? Like, hey, I'm time out. Let me process that a minute. I need a minute
Right.
because that really pisses me off. So let me go. Let's take a break and I'm gonna refill my coffee and process
Right.
that for a minute. Like, how do you work those into where that's a okay thing to not have those blow up moments because you're just overwhelmed?
I think taking a break is certainly a good strategy, but here's what we found. So, if you score low in emotional self awareness on these tests, we start there because that's the foundational. That's the foundation for all of this work is the awareness first, right? And we have this thing called the Emotional Self Awareness Pre Reading and Self Study Guide, which takes you through all the elements of what is an emotion versus what you're thinking. And can you do multiple emotions at once? And how do you recognize it? And how do you recognize when you're getting that emotional hijack? All of those things and exercises to be able to manage them in a better way. So we start with that emotional management first, but what we found is initially when maybe this superintendent says initially I need to take a break, I need to think about this or whatever, but ultimately the better you get at that of recognizing your emotional states and managing them, you can start managing them in a lot shorter time. Those things become almost immediate over time. It doesn't happen right away. I always tell people this is more like learning to play a musical instrument or learning a language. It takes place in a different part of your brain. It's not like cognitive learning. But once you get it, it's pretty permanent. And there's a company that I've done some work with called 6 Seconds. And the reason they call it 6 seconds is they say that's the gap. That's the time you need to process your emotions and respond appropriately.
Yeah.
So, initially, when you first start this work, that may be 2 minutes. But as you work on this and as you get these skills more honed and your emotional literacy more nuanced, then that time is compressed. And then you get to where you can react to those things and respond instead of react almost immediately within just a few seconds of processing. But it's not easy. It takes a lot of time and coaching and follow up and hard work. But that's the ultimate place that you can be with this work is you can always, I'll say almost always be in control of your emotional reactions to things.
Yeah.
Almost always, unless it's like a tiger coming at you, your emotional brain's going to kick in and you'll hit fight flight. But in your day to day, you're going to be so much better at not reacting and just getting a really good, measured, cogent, cohesive, connecting response to everything that happens to you during the day.
I think it's hilarious that you're measuring this thing in seconds and minutes, right? Like the pause
Yeah.
that I need, I think is more like hours or days. Sometimes I just get so fired up, but I will say that the one thing I've learned in kind of my older years, as I'll call them, is that when I don't react to what's being said to me, right? When I
Mhm.
don't chase every corner or every up and down of the roller coaster and just know that, hey, the ebbs and flows of construction are going to work this thing out, or just the physics of life are really going to
Yeah.
come through and make things happen. And I feel like that has made me a stronger leader in the later years of my career where it's like, I'm not chasing the drama. I'm not chasing the he said, she said things, right? We're going after facts. We're trying to understand what is actually happening here. And it's like a scavenger hunt for the truth or righteousness. And I hear you saying that internal battle the same with EI is okay. It's an internal scavenger hunt for what is truth, what is righteous right now, and how are you truly feeling. And I know that's a tough word for a lot of old dogs out there, right?
Yeah.
Feeling, emotions, vulnerability. Just saying that stuff makes me throw up in my mouth a little bit. What
Yeah.
how do you what do you tell somebody? How do you get somebody past that like even like, again, me, it makes me uncomfortable. I'm having trouble even asking the question. Like,
Like a stigma.
yeah, like
Yeah.
maybe, like, yeah. How do you get past that? What do you tell people?
First of all, I tell them my journey, and I was totally skeptical of this stuff in the beginning. But the more I researched it and the more I applied it and the more I see the results, the more I know that it's real and that it's based in neuroscience and how your brain works. So this isn't about sharing all your emotions and being vulnerable. This isn't about any of that. And the place to start for most people is your own health and well-being, your own emotional states that contribute to either a chronic stress state or a state where you're managing your stress in a good way. In order to manage your stress, you have to know it. You have to be aware of it. That's just emotional awareness. So that's where we usually start. And then they start finding that there's all side roads to the benefits to that of understanding what emotional states you're in day to day, moment to moment, minute to minute throughout your day. Then it's about managing those states. Then it gets back to this Lao Tzu's quote of managing others is strength. Managing yourself makes you fearless. So I talk about being fearless and getting such a honed sense of yourself and your emotions and being able to manage those in a good way. You don't have to fear anything. You don't have to be afraid of anything, right? And when we talk about vulnerability, we think it's a kind of a wimpy thing, but think about it this way. I think Brene Brown described it this way. If you're on a battlefield and you got an injured guy 50 yards away and you're under heavy fire, and under heavy fire. That is a heroic action, right? If there's no fire, there's no heroic action. If he's just out there and you just walk over casually, grab him, pick him up, and take him back. So this is about being able to show that heroic nature of yourself while you're under fire. And without that fire, there is no heroic action. So that vulnerability is a heroic thing, right? Because there's
Yeah.
risk.
Yeah. No, I think that's what you just said, the fearless. I'm probably thinking of some of most my most extreme angry reactions, right? And it's probably when I'm
Yeah.
scared. It's when I'm scared to death, right? Fear. Yeah.
Anger is such a fear-based emotion. Either you're afraid you're being disrespected, they're messing with your values. There's all of that's a fear-based thing. Anger is almost always based in fear.
Yeah.
And when you're fearless and you can know you can handle anything, you'll very rarely get angry. Like I said, you can use strategic anger at that point.
Yeah. And I'm thinking about, so I call it robot mode, but I kind of came up with this, but it's a combo between Big Hero 6 and what you taught us at Old Dogs. But when you just said that emotions are information, that really stuck to me. And you already
Mhm.
said that once in here too. But I thought about the robot in Big Hero 6, and if you go watch that movie, it seems like probably the most empathetic character there is the robot. And I'm like, wait a minute, the robot's not a person. So how
Yeah.
can we say that the robot is the most emotionally intelligent person there? But the thing is, because the robot has no feelings, you don't have a response and a reaction to what the kids you're just trying to go take the information in and then process the information. And so I thought about robot mode. So when people are coming at me with however emotional they are or what they're saying, I try to take that info in, and that's the words, that's the behavior, the emotion, take all that as input, but I'm not going
Yeah.
to process that right now. I have a limited amount of time with them. I got to take everything they're going to give me, and they're going to communicate with me a lot about a situation, not just with their words, but also their body language too.
Yeah.
Then I have to go sit down and process that, figure out like what just actually happened. And I
Right.
call it,
Are you being curious and not judgmental?
yeah, a little Ted Lasso action there. But
Yeah.
yeah, am I doing something good there, Brent? Can you tell me, like, am I on the right track?
I think it's perfect. I think it's perfect. And it's about, like you said, multiple ways of listening, not just that, especially if they're ranting about something or they're up in your face about something. If they're in that emotional state and they're angry, then think about what's behind that. And is it fear? Is it that they're afraid that they're going to make a mistake, get called out, whatever those fears are, right? So what are the underlying things? Or has somebody messed with their values, right? Or what are they feeling? If that is anger that's coming out, what's the root cause of that? And if you can tap into that by being curious instead of judgmental, and maybe ask some really good questions and say, obviously you're upset about this, let's talk about it further. Tell me about whatever you're hearing, and let them expand on that. But if you can tap into multiple ways of listening beside just what they're saying, or just if they're shouting or they're angry at you, not just that emotion, but what's behind that emotion and what's causing that. And you can't solve a problem if you don't know what it is. And most of the time, those problems have their root cause in some kind of emotional response to something. And if you can start tapping into that, rather than we get into problem solving mode where somebody's yelling or somebody doesn't have the resources they need or whatever those issues are, we just want to solve the problem. But if we can dig a little deeper and figure out what's the root cause of that problem, usually you can head off future problems, and you can also get to the real situation, the real problem.
Yeah, that's good.
Hold on, guys. I just caught up to this identifying the emotion, and now you're talking about identifying the emotion behind the emotion, like the hidden emotion.
That's right.
Oh,
Yeah.
you guys are moving too fast for me. Hold on.
And Lean, that's the 5 whys, right?
That's right. Root cause analysis, man.
The root cause emotion analysis. Oh my gosh.
But it's true. Think about this. Somebody's not performing. Have you had that on projects? We all have that. Somebody's not performing. Why aren't they performing? We make all these assumptions of they're just lazy, or they're young and they don't have a good work ethic, or we'll assign whatever we need to assign to that. That's the reason. And so the answer to get them to perform better is maybe yelling at them and say, what the fuck's wrong with you? Whatever those techniques that you have, beat the shit out of them, and they'll perform better. Or yell at them, or point it out to everybody like, hey, look at dumbass. When is he going to step up? He's dragging the whole team down. Whatever those things are that we get back on track. But non-performance, I've found that about 90+% of the time, it's not what you think it is. There is something there, and your job as a leader is to find out what that something is. And again, you can't solve a problem if you don't know what it is. And I'll give you an example. I had a guy, he was a PM working with an APM, and he said, I've asked this APM for these reports for months, and he refuses to give them to me. I said, really? He refuses? He goes, yeah. I don't know what his fucking problem is. I said, does he know how to do the reports? He goes, he damn well better know how to do them if he wants to be a PM someday. I said, I think we might have found the problem. So this guy's leadership style was, you better know what the fuck you're doing. You better give me what I asked for, or I'm going to come down on your ass. So this guy, I said, why don't you just ask him, do you know how to do these reports? He said, okay, I'll do that. So he comes back and he says, that was it. He didn't know how to do the reports. So I used it as a coaching moment. I taught him how to do the reports. I've got the reports now. But he said, you heard his response. He damn well better know how to do these reports. So he didn't know what the problem was. As soon as he found out what the problem was, he solved the problem. But he assumed the problem was, you're young and lazy and you don't give a shit and you don't have good work ethic. That was what he thought.
Yeah, and he's ready to fire that guy.
Yeah, totally.
And the thing is, and you go back to the leader. So the leader grew up in a certain way, right? The leader now has defensiveness that he's working with. And so he doesn't want to go be vulnerable to go sit down and talk to the person. It's easier just to hide behind I'm the boss and you do what I say, right? And
Yeah.
that's the 70% emotions again, right? You can't
Yeah.
say you're not emotional, just get your job done, because that guy was avoiding that conversation because that was what he considered out of his comfort zone is too vulnerable, right?
Totally, totally. And that whole I don't know how to do the reports. There are only about 100 of those reasons why people aren't performing, and it could be something personal. They could be having health issues, financial issues. They didn't get a good sleep over the last 3 weeks. There's 100 things it could be, but we assume and we kick ass to get results, and it also often has the opposite effect. Their performance gets worse because that wasn't what the problem was. And if it is a stress problem or a home problem or a finance problem, and you just do more ass kicking, that just makes their problem worse. And usually your performance gets even worse. So you got to find out what the problem is. That takes connection, that takes human connection and communication and vulnerability and being curious instead of judgmental and all those things that we know to do when we have the time and the patience and the energy to do it. But then we look at the day to day on our construction project. It's balls to the walls, it's assholes and elbows, it's problem solving all day, it's crisis management. So we never think about these things, right? But I'm saying if we started thinking about these things more, there'd be a lot fewer crises and a lot fewer fires to put out.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
Yeah, when you guys are talking, you make me think about the environments that we're creating as leaders. And Rox, this is something I learned from our talk with Roxanne Evans, is that trade worker on their phone might just not know what to do, or might have already got their work done, or like you said, maybe health issues, or name your thousands of reasons here.
Yeah.
But as a leader, did you create that environment where they're having fun and getting shit done? Or did you create an environment where they're only getting shit done over, and there is no fun, there is no arousal, interest, like true connection to the why behind what we're doing? I
Right.
think that if we want to really make a difference in this industry, we need to stop and think, how do we get workers in the flow state? How do we get workers so enthralled in their work that, man, time just gone like that? And there's tricks to doing it, right? And you're talking about some of them. Hey, are the goals clear? Are the job instructions clear? Are all the roadblocks removed such that this person can perform at a high level? And those roadblocks are really, the majority of those roadblocks are looking in that mirror, as Mike alluded to earlier, and saying, hey, have I done everything to get the hell out of the way so that this person can perform? And to me, I keep going back to that self-awareness side, right? That identifying just the emotion that we're experiencing, not the hidden emotion, but the one emotion that we're experiencing. And if it is frustration, like looking in the mirror at yourself and how do I make adjustments such that the environment is different, is the key that I'm taking away from this right now.
Yeah. I totally agree. And again, what's the foundation for that? It's your self awareness, right? And then you can expand that to include the awareness of your environment and your awareness of other people in that environment and then what's going on with them. And it becomes this thing where you're perceiving everything around you and then reacting accordingly. And I think we get so focused and head down and results driven that we lose that sense of not only our own awareness, but what's going on around us and reading the room and reading how people are reacting. If you get really good with the empathy and your own self-awareness and you talk to somebody about a non-performance, you're gonna see in about 5 seconds what's really going on with them and be able to dig deeper. But if you're
Yeah.
just trying to kick their ass, you never see any of that.
I think you bring a good point because when we're talking about success and results, I think when we're leaders, our success and results matrix need to change a little bit. It needs to not be how much CMU did I get up, how much brick did I get up. We got workers on site that are really focused on the production and the units, but I think we need to be looking at as leaders on what are we accomplishing, like you said, in with building people up and focusing on, are they aware of their emotions, are they able to
Yeah.
identify when those emotions get high? How do we go work together as a team to create an environment where we can be vulnerable, we can share ideas with each other, we can use all of our brains instead of one of our brains? I feel like that's the results that we need to be looking for and trying to measure. And a lot of that just comes in when I walk into a job site. I can probably tell in 2 minutes, maybe less, on what does it feel like, right? And you
Yeah.
talked about some of the, you can feel people's energy and you can feel
Yeah.
emotions there. And you can tell, are people connected? Are people working well together? Do people feel like they're a family, or are people disconnected, head down, got to go grind and get my work done? Those people are going to run on battery for a little bit, but they're not going to be able to plug back in, and they're not going to
Mm-mm.
be able to recharge. They're going to run for a while, and then they're going to burn out, and then they're going to drop. And then everyone's going to be mad because their performance, man, they were all rock stars, and then they just tanked
Yeah.
because they never had any support. They never had anybody else to recharge with.
Yeah. I don't know what the statistics are, but my guess is it's a pretty good high percentage of people that leave this industry just to get away from the stress.
Yeah.
Like I can go build houses and have a lot less stress in my life than what I'm doing here. Or I used to say they go to retail, but there's no retail anymore. But there's things you can do to make money that are a lot easier than construction. So we have to change. And this is the big giant picture issue is we've got to change this culture. And man, is that turning the battleship around or climbing Mount Everest? That's a huge deal. But what if you walked on site every day and you felt like you could show up as yourself, that you felt cared about, you felt like people gave a shit about your health and well-being, that they were concerned about you performing and learning new things and all of those things that we know keep people engaged and keep people coming back and keep people fulfilled and with purpose and meaning. We've got to start adding those things in. It can't just be a paycheck for 8 or 10 hours of work every day. That is not sustainable. And it's coming home to roost with the workforce development crisis. And it's going to get a lot worse. These huge projects with needing thousands of people, and we just don't have them. So
Yeah.
we've got to change it. And it starts with, to me, it starts with those leaders in the field. They're the ones that are going to create this change. The PMs and the PXs and the VPs and all those guys, they may have some peripheral influence with that, but it's the folks in the field that are going to have to change this industry's approach to how we do work and how we treat our people that are putting the stuff in place.
Yeah, leaders in the field need to stand up and be different. And just because you had it this way doesn't make it right. I think so important to hit that pause button and reflect. And it is happening on jobs, Brent. You're coming to projects, you're speaking to people, the cow buyers of the world. Um, it is happening, but not at the pace that we need in order to attract the talent that we want. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I love what we're talking about here. There are simple things to show people that they matter on your project site. And it might just be a smile or a
Yeah.
good morning or good afternoon. It doesn't take a whole lot more than that for people to feel connected to their work. And I love what you're saying. I really try hard to practice this on job sites every single day. I did hear Mike earlier mention the word series. And Mike, I'm like, I want to put a little cliffhanger out there and see what does the remainder of this series look like? What is that all about?
You know what we could do? We could have the old dogs do a choose your own adventure, throw out some topics and see what they want to talk about.
I like that. I think you've made the challenge. You said, hey, leaders, we got to do something different. The challenge is there. And we talked today about what is emotional intelligence and how does it impact us. I think we got that general scope. And now I think the leaders, we're going to say, okay, what Brent, teach us, how do we do what we're talking about? I think if you had to go away with your top three for today, I'm going to correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking number one is identify where you're at. You got to know where you're at. You got to have a starting point where you belong as number one, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And then to do that, there's a free quiz you can go take right on your website that just says, here's where I'm at, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
at
It's
a
at
minimum,
BrentDarnell.com.
there you
Yeah.
go.
There's two other things on there that might be helpful, especially with all the talk about stress, is there's a nutrition survey which tells us how your body is working. I would take that as well. And we see correlations between the emotional and the physical. And the third free thing that's there is called the body battery inventory. And it measures stressors versus recovery. And it gives you a number. If the number's negative, you have to either build in more recovery or reduce your stress or both. So that's another good one to take to get a baseline. And then we can have all these sessions and talk about stress and recovery. We can also talk about communication, relationships, whatever you guys want to talk about.
Yeah, I think that's awesome. So I think step one, find out where you're at, right? And then one thing we can do immediately is start to, like we said, start to identify that there's something deeper behind what's in front of us, right? So I had a boss that was really aggressive. A lot of people are afraid of him. He's always an angry guy when something bad happened. And I end up absolutely loving the dude, and I learned so much from him. But I learned something really important that a boss told me, and it was listen to the message, not the delivery.
Mm,
And when I learned that, I'm like, okay, the dude's angry. He's coming at me. But again, grab the information and then take from the information. And I'm thinking the same thing here of whoever's coming at us, we can control our emotions, right? We can decide, am I going to bull back or blow up, or am I just going to take in the info? And that way if I can keep them engaged long enough, I can get to that root that you're talking about. And now I
yeah.
can go solve the root instead of blowing up right back at them. And now we've gone nowhere because now we're both in fight or flight and the conversation's over at that point, right?
Yeah, totally. That's a great approach. And I know it seems difficult, but you do have 100% control over your reaction to any situation. And so it's about recognizing that you have that control and then cultivating the doing the exercises and cultivating how to do that. And that's a lot of what we teach is, again, understanding and managing your own emotional states. And that it's not easy. It takes a lot of work, but it's so worth it. Can you imagine? Like I said, you can be fearless, right? When you can manage all that and not ever really just take off on somebody unless it's strategic anger, man, talk about feeling in control. Talk about just being fearless, knowing that you can handle any situation from any person on this planet. Man, that is a great place to be.
And Brent, I'm going to go as far as saying that's about the only thing in the world that you can control.
Mm,
And
yeah.
so why would you not take advantage of the one thing you can control? Because anything else at best you can only influence. And
Yeah.
so take control of your own emotions, your own emotional state, your own awareness of where you are in certain situations. And then and only then can we actually do something about it. And
Yeah.
that is some old dog wisdom right there, Sir Brent.
Well,
Boom.
thank you.
All right. So the takeaway is go figure out where you're at. And then I would say just start to take in the info on where you are. Where do I get elevated? Where do I not get elevated? Try to understand in your day to day where your spots are and how you respond. And then we can take some of that info in the next episode and try to figure out, Brent, give us the tips and tricks. Help us to grow and learn new tricks so we can go make this industry better.
Yeah. And there's lots of good resources too that I'll just give you guys. For instance, if you take the test and we get a bunch of people that said, hey, I scored pretty low in self awareness, we'll just send them the self awareness study guide so they can work through it on their own and improve their self awareness by doing that. So I've got lots of those resources that I'll make available to all the old dogs for sure.
I love
Nice.
that. That's awesome. 70-30 emotions versus what logic. And then we got 87-13 character versus content. I'm seeing some similarities there, Hoots, on the control of the self and building up the character and building up the ability to take in the information and not blow up and respond with immediate emotions. And we were talking with Mac about people get hired for what they know, and they get fired for who they are. And a lot of this is related.
Yeah.
And so I think it's something we cannot ignore in the industry, and we have to go attack this. How can we control ourselves better to make this industry better?
Yeah. I got lots of good stuff for you guys. So I'm looking forward to the series and getting this out to people and getting them to make the changes for themselves and make themselves better.
Love it.
That's the Old Dawg Leadership Podcast, built by those who do for those who will.